we have a really cool panel coming on. We have put together an amazing group of people with totally awesome ideas. A swimsuit made of sponges that dries itself. Can you close the door? A home unit insect harvester you can actually eat to get your daily fresh protein. Clothes with tech, digital media like Twitter messages. Come on. That's why we have called it out-of-the-box innovation. And now you understand why. Well, the person that has taken the challenge to conduct this panel is the COO of Value Retail Management in London. She's changed to BlueMint. Okay, I was about to ask you. Sorry, BlueMint Ventures. That was option B. This is true. She has worked for more than 20 years she has more than 20 years of international experience, although she looks extremely young, in consumer markets all over the world. She enjoys cross-border investing and loves meeting entrepreneurs and looking at new businesses. If they are like this that are coming on, no wonder. She has a lot of fun. She's currently investing in early venture companies and advising private equity. Well, I was going to say something about value retail management, but maybe we'll forget about that. All right, she's wonderful, and she's Patty Dimond. Please welcome her on stage and her panel. Inanç, Katharina. No, they're coming on later.
We're going to do this just slightly different. I'll apologize up front because I've got something wrong with my foot, so I'll be leaning.
You want to?
No, I'm fine. I'd rather stand.
Okay.
So welcome, and I'm really excited. As has just been said, I have the opportunity to be the moderator today for a session that's called Out of the Box Innovation with some three very talented entrepreneurs that will come up in turn. My name is Patty Dimond. I am from London, and in this ecosystem, I'm an investor. Just a little bit about myself so you know who I am. I have been in the Go Beyond community since about 2008 as an investor. I am one of the 9 lead investors of an initiative called Rising Tide, which you might have heard about or read about. It's Rising Tide Europe, 99 women investing, 9 lead investors, and I've just been involved in putting together a syndicate for investment in the UK called BlueMint Ventures. So enough about me, and now we're going to move on to the entrepreneurs. And how we're going to structure this session is we're going to allow 5 minutes, 5-6 minutes for each of the entrepreneurs to present their businesses, and then we're going to ask them some questions and have what I hope to be a robust discussion about innovation. So it's not going to be a pitch, it's going to be about innovation. So please, if you have questions, we'd like to hear them. And we'll start off with Clara. And Clara is a fashion designer, and she's from Paris, and she will give us, as you've heard, she'll give us her presentation for 5 to 6 minutes, and then we'll move on to the next. Clara?
Thank you, Clara. Sorry, Patty, I was waiting for you to double check.
Thank you, Patty.
Take a seat, please. Here, sit down.
There we go. So hello, my name is Clara. I'm a fashion designer. I'm based in Paris at the moment. And so to talk a little bit about innovation in fashion, it's very interesting what's happening today because if we think about the past century, for example, in the 1900s we had the sort of curved S silhouette. In the 1920s we removed the corset and had a very streamlined look. And then in the 1960s we invented lycra, which is we call spandex, which is actually an anagram for expanse. So this fabric which stretches and can come really close to the body. So these inventions and these movements, like liberating the woman from the corset and everything like this, formatted and changed the silhouette. It evolved through time, and now we're kind of at a stage where the silhouette is not really evolving that much anymore. It's going through cycles. We look back now, we're inspired by the 70s or by the 50s or by the 90s now. We're like going back, the cycle is getting shorter and shorter. And so, what is actually happening in fashion now is really more about mimicry. So it's about finding your group, finding your clan, like who do you want to belong to, and on the flip side of that, it's also about differentiation. So you want to belong to a group, but you also then you differentiate yourself from another group, and also within that group you want to be unique and different. And so for me, in my work, I'm quite inspired by things, like most fashion designers, which are outside the realm of fashion. And maybe because of my background as a graphic designer, growing up in the Silicon Valley, I'm really drawn and interested in sort of our and more ambiguous relationship that we have to technology, how it's sort of omnipresent yet intangible and invisible, and how it infiltrates every part of our lives. And so to go back to this idea of the uniform, wanting to create a uniform in fashion, wanting to have something to belong to, I think it's quite similar in technology. We all have these screens. We all sort of look the same, that all look the same from the outside, and it's really what's inside that is going to be special. But at the end of the day, if you think about like making a snazzy, a profile on some social media network, all you're really doing is filling in blanks that have been pre-formatted for a computer to understand. So this idea of the uniform is really interesting to me. So for this collection that I will show you, I was really inspired by this idea of the uniform, and so I started out by taking classical pieces of the wardrobe, like a man's jacket or trousers or jumpsuits, etc., and sort of dissecting these pieces to reveal the body underneath, interesting parts of the body underneath. In the idea that that we're going really through these, into the screen, through the window, to see what's really intimate. So this sort of parallel between technology and fashion. So these are some of the silhouettes that I've sort of deconstructed to show different parts of the body. And then on the flip side of that, to show what is really underneath, I went through a lot of experimentation and a lot of failure and a lot of trying and to come up with different materials to sort of represent this idea that the human and technology are sort of coming closer and closer together. So, for example, I made these polyester tubes, so you can't really see, but they're in the middle. So they're laser cut and thermoformed, and so what you get is a very airy, light material, but it's in the shape of a tube, and then in that way you can sort of start to communicate the idea of networks and systems. And so to make this parallel between the anatomical body and the sort of robotic and computer body. And I used also LEDs to get an effect of light, and these are all embroideries. So, for example, the image on the far right is fiber which lets the light pass through it when you have the LED at the end. Sorry. And so this is what I've come up with in the end. So we have opening up the uniform to see what's intimate, and then I've also integrated heart monitors, heart sensors within the garments, so that the actual physical body is expressing itself. So you have the pulsation of the light coming from inside of the body. So this is the... and then so some other times that the clothes have been worn. So thank you. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Clara. And we're going to have an opportunity to ask you some questions in a few minutes. So the next up is Inanç, and Inanç is another designer, but from the architectural world. So he's going to share with us some of his designs and solutions that he's been giving his clients. Thank you.
Thank you very much, buddy. Is it on? Is it on? Okay. Hello, everyone. I am Inanç Eray. I am an architect and partner at Eray Carbajo. Eray Carbajo is an architectural and design studio based in New York and Istanbul. And I call myself an architect, but I really want to call myself an explorer. And who else is like better explorer than this guy? If you know his work, all his life is trying to solve a problem. He has a problem, he's doing all these plans, trying all these materials, new technologies, right? I relate to him, so it's our mentor. Like in Eray Carbajo, we are basically testing new ideas, new forms, new materials, new manufacturing technologies every day. Whether the content is a radio tower or a bus stop, or a cart, like a leaf table, like a coffee table, we like to innovate. We like to kind of carry on concepts to different scales. And in order to interact with this broad scope of work, we usually kind of go talk to consultants, team up with local experts or researchers. And this particular project, and I mean the swimwear, came from the research, ongoing research we were conducting with the professors at the University of California, Riverside. We were fascinated about this superior material. It's a carbon-based material. It has super hydrophobic properties. It repels water. And it's oleophilic. It absorbs oil and oil-based contaminants. It's also a great fireproofing, has fireproofing material properties. So it was kind of a remedy for a thinner building skin. So that's how the research initiated at the beginning. After a year-long research, we just came across a wearable design competition. So we said, like, let's put this research into the competition. And the design process was also kind of not a success at the beginning. We designed the hat, we designed the umbrella, which was like totally failure. And we designed a cape. I think that gave us the idea to how people can become environmental heroes. And that evolved into the idea of like, how can we clean seas as we are swimming? So it all came together. The design was inspired by the structure, the carbon structure of the material itself. So we came up with this outer shell. It is a 3D printed elastoplastic, and it's basically holding firmly the inner pads, which we apply the material inside. It's recyclable after use. So you basically, it's like take it out and then put the inner pad in. And after we win the international design competition, this was actually on display this summer in the Design Museum in Barcelona. One thing I think the most appreciated was the sponsor challenged the way we think about the wearable technology. Because when you talk about wearable technology, what comes to mind is usually like technological products that are usually for personal benefit. Instead, Sponsuit wanted to create this collective effort, right? Like when many people, millions, wear this suit and then go out to seas, then you create a difference. It's kind of like very similar to this crowdsourcing economy. The idea was similar. So we come up with this term. It's the V in the wearable technology. So, I mean, to sum up, going back to the coyote, I think it's if nothing will, like none of this will be happening if we basically shy away from failing and like turning really jokes into an actual design challenge and design project. So this is too fast.
Wonderful. I'm sure your clients are just amazed at some of the solutions you come up with. Thank you. Okay, so next up is Katharina, and she is going to talk to us about something that probably is not terribly intuitive to many of us. It's the food revolution. And she's from Hong Kong, so we've got Paris, New York, and Hong Kong. Thanks, Katharina.
Hi, good morning. My name is Katharina, and I think I just click further, yeah. And I'm an industrial designer as well, so actually for me it's super refreshing to be on a panel with designers at a startup conference. That doesn't happen too often. I'm really delighted about that. So I'm an industrial designer gone entrepreneur as well. And what we do is, with Livin Farms, we empower people to start a food revolution out of their kitchens. So we make delicious protein products, and we make scalable insect farming technology. This is my businessy pitch, and trying to adapt it now a bit more to the design side. So a lot of people sometimes come up to me and they say, "Well, this is actually a thing, like, you're actually doing this?" Yes, we have around 1,000 customers now with less than a year in business. We raised almost $150,000 on Kickstarter, and we have ongoing pre-orders. These are the two things that we do. So we make the technology, and right now we offer it as an educational consumer product, so people can grow their own. And we do the food product because we noticed that we actually also have to build this food market and go both ways in order to really get this movement going. My take on it, the background story behind this is I'm not originally from Hong Kong, but I moved there from Austria, and I grew up on a farm, on a tiny farm, and I raised cattle and horses and pigs. And when I came to Hong Kong, I was impressed by the scale and the density, and I saw that if we want to feed people in the future in such environments where we don't have space, we have very limited resources, we have to think about alternatives. We can't really grow that many pigs in this world. So that's how I got into insects, and I wanted to empower people really to become sort of independent from their food system, or at least be empowered to make more conscious choices. And that's where I started to look into insects. They can be grown on waste materials, which allows us to become almost independent from land, because we can use waste materials. We don't need fertile land. We don't need to add water in order to grow it. So most of you have probably already heard about it. There's a lot of media traction about this now. Insects are super sustainable, they're healthy, but the problem is, right, you still want to eat your steak or your schnitzel or whatever. But the thing is, you don't necessarily need to change your behaviors to do it. You can, powderize it. You can make it into meat patties or meatballs, or mix it into everyday foods, because they're quite neutral and a bit nutty. So they tick really all the boxes compared to other types of alternatives. So, what we're really looking into is we grow a new food category here, and we grow it really with our customers and really with the support of the people. And it's going to be introduced to us in more in the sense of nuts, of ingredients, something that comes in maybe in some hidden forms as well. And we're actually looking at a $5 billion market. 25% of people in Europe said they want to eat insects. If they're offered, they're gonna eat it. Of course, they're not gonna eat it as a big steak or as one pile of insects, but they're gonna incorporate it in a similar fashion as nuts or as soy, which is 2% of their protein. So that creates still a really big market, and that's why I started to get into business. So we sell these two things, and we're really moving towards being an integrated food business. Our customers right now and are mostly private people. They often have families. They really care about sustainability, about healthy foods. And most importantly, they are super interested in this, in growing this, in telling others, and in exploring it. But we do have more and more B2B customers. We're scaling our technology. We look into research and sell to universities. So for us, it's really important to have this educational product, to educate the market, and to grow with our customers. There's also been a lot of investment. We also got funded by Kickstarter. The most exciting thing about this is that really hundreds of people have funded projects on edible insects, be it protein bars, be it our project on Indiegogo and on Kickstarter. So hundreds of thousands of dollars spent by people that want this. We are a sustainable lifestyle brand, and right now we actually mainly sell to Europe and North America, which comes as a surprise to most people. And we're a very design-driven team. So for us, it's important. The innovation really starts, with the design of everything in order to make sure that everything we put out there is nice, looks good, looks healthy, looks delicious, and we really care about this a lot. So are these strange foods? Not really, but they were considered as strange foods once before. Sushi was a workers' food in Japan and was considered disgusting in the Western world. Raw fish, who wants to eat that? Lobster was given to prisoners. It was the cockroach of the ocean. And even the potato was something ugly and was given to the poor until it had its big revival and is being put into all sorts of foods. So we really think that the same thing will happen with insects too. It's about marketing it, about putting it into the right foods and using it in the right way. And then we can look back and it will all look so obvious. That's one of our customers who said that. So yeah, start a food revolution. Grab me later if you want to try some. Thanks.
Excellent. So, Katharina, so that is innovation brought to some basic industries, some food and fashion and architectural design. So I'm going to be a little pragmatic, and I'm going to go back to, what I understand the definition of innovation is. And the definition of innovation to me is successful implementation of creative ideas. So it's not just crazy ideas, it's how do you make them successful? How do you implement them so they're successful? So that's what I want to open up, and I'll open up with a couple of questions, and I'd really like it if you could all engage in some questions with these three very talented people. So my first question will be to Clara, and she talked a little bit about her inspiration, and it's fascinating to see her sort of bring together different worlds. And I'd like to understand a little bit about not only the inspiration, which she did talk about, but how do you know about the acceptance? How do you know that there's a customer, and what problem are you trying to solve? I know everybody asked that question, but what problem are you trying to solve with your design?
So you ask if there is a customer. So I'm not the first person to integrate LEDs or light into garments, but I think we've come to a point now where I'm seeing that the fashion industry is actually becoming open to this, because before it was, ridiculous, it wasn't interesting, it was, you're a geek, like this is not fashion forward. And now we see Chanel, for example, on their last runway had a bag with LEDs in it. Their whole runway set was just like all these fake server data cable, it was just like this huge server room. Anyway, so I think now is actually the perfect time. I think now the market is ready for it. So now it's just about finding ways to make it for the connections to be washable, for everything to work properly, and to be able to sell it to a consumer.
Excellent. Okay. Inanç, the question for you, in terms of the innovation process, how do you think about it? Because you're bringing solutions to a client. So I guess they've identified what the problem is, and now you're creating a solution. So tell us a little bit about the process. How do you think about that?
We don't, we also do a lot of design and architecture competitions, so it's kind of like client is also ourselves. We are kind of initiating, we are very proactive in that manner. But I think the way most of these projects are too, we like to challenge the norm, right? What is known, and we question everything, and then it's a lot of, the presentation says, it's a lot of failures, a lot of trials. And every day you come to work with another a positive day. It's you're doomed to fail anyway. But I think it's the courage that you have to try the new ideas. You have to play with, and then if you have this research body going on at the back of your mind, I think it's easier to innovate when an opportunity comes in. You kind of say, okay.
And you talked a little bit about failures, and failures I think are really important to this whole process. But how do you know when to give up or to push on? I mean, when is that? Well,
you don't really know. I mean, it's you don't give up. That's the thing, and you keep on building up, and it's kind of becomes from day one to day five. Like in 5 years' time, you can always go back to your repertoire and bring back something. Oh, I thought like this in that process. I'm like, can I use this here? Kind of like. Okay. You're kind of like playing with it, and it's kind of a designer mindset. It's very popular, this design thinking in the
Sure.
industry, you know. So
Excellent.
it is kind of inherited in our processes anyway.
Okay. Katharina, a question for you, and I think I'd go back to the consumer as well, because I think it's interesting. We had a conversation earlier about Hong Kong, and that's probably a market that there's a greater acceptance. But obviously, you want to open this up. So how do you think about the acceptance in the rest of the world when people look at it and say, you eat bugs? So your distribution and marketing is going to be quite different, and that you got to be innovative about that too. So how do you think about that?
Yeah, we think about that a lot because from the very beginning of this project, people would always come up, and everybody. That's a good thing about our technology, our innovation, that everybody has an opinion about it. I think that's the best indication of that we're onto something. If no one says they don't care, either they find it disgusting or they really love it, or they find it super interesting. There's always something about it, and that's a good indication. And from the very beginning, people would always come up with their own ideas and say, so why don't you apply this to the developing world? Why don't you go there and farm there, because that's where people need it? Or why don't you just make a protein bar like some people do already? We really let our customers decide in the very first place, and that's why we decided to launch this product as the first product, because we want to see what people make with it and what people do with it. They really take it into their own hands and they share it and show us what they want to get out of it.
Great. Can I ask, are there any questions from any of you? Please go ahead.
I got a question for Katharina.
Okay. It's fantastic. Thank you.
Mic check. There you go. So at which point did that leap of faith, materialize into, okay, this is going to be something, like people are going to buy this, or are you guys there yet? Because for me, I like you mentioned, conceptually it's going to be a bit hard for me to eat bugs. So I'm interested to see that process.
Yeah. So it all started with the first. This is the third version of it. And it started with the first one, which was much more conceptual and crazy in its design. It got published and it got quite viral online. And immediately hundreds of people emailed me and said, I want to buy this. I already look into this as an alternative. So that's where the traction started. And I started to notice there's something about this. And I tried a lot of different things. I went to Africa. I explored all these different opportunities in this area. But then I came back to the same thing where I had started. I saw that what I need to do is this device first and see if people can adopt it and if people like it. And I mean, almost 1,000 people, they have pledged an average of $175. And so, people put their money, I think as soon as enough people actually pay money into something that is on pre-order, it shows that there is something there.
Great.
We have to work on it.
Other questions over here?
Hi, good morning. This is a question related to cultural transition about eating insects. And I was wondering, how are you boosting up that cultural change to make insects a mainstream food and sushi of 21st century?
Yeah, so we're going these two tracks, right? We educate people with the device. A lot of schools bought it. Kids are crazy about it. We get emails that kids totally crazy about this as a food. I think they are the next generation. We have most of our customers right now are 25 to 55. So they're people. A lot of young people are super interested in it. So it's a growing. We're going to have a long lifetime of these customers. because they're quite young. And the food product that we sell right now is quite simple and natural, just to show people. But as a next step, we are going to incorporate it into various types of food. And encourage our customers to make their own stuff with it. And we offer recipes, we offer a lot of support, so people can directly, we support our customers in the journey of what can I do with it? What can I make with it? And I think this is really building it.
Can I ask, is there any questions of Inanç or Clara? Because I have a couple for them, so if anybody else does, they can jump in. Otherwise, Clara, can you tell me what perhaps are the most exciting and the worst times when you go through this innovation process? What are the most, when you're having fun and really enjoying what you're doing, and also what are the worst times and the worst things you're doing during this innovation?
Well, the most fun and the best time I'm having is when I'm thinking of the ideas, when I'm doing the embroidery, the handwork, when you have the time, you give yourself the time to really work on a project. When you invite your friends to come help you, because there's no way that you can do it alone. And I think the worst, or the most difficult, it's not the worst really, it's the most difficult, is facing, I guess, going from a conceptual artistic project to something that can be brought to the market and sold. Because for the moment, my pieces are, I've gotten some media attention, and they are leased, so people borrow them for different events, etc. But they're quite artisanal, so they're too expensive for the market at the moment. So this is like something I have to face.
Okay. Yeah. And Ash, can you answer the same question?
What
What's the most, when you're having the most fun, or when you're really enjoying what you're doing through the innovation phase, versus when you're really not having a good time? I mean, what are those?
I think the most fun was like after we released the sponge suit, people were coming up to us. Like we were in Maker Faire in Rome, and like people were actually asking, like, is this size available? Is that size available? Can I buy it right now? I mean, like that's kind of like this attention, and then and some were like horrible, like I would never wear this on my like I wouldn't like the oil touch my skin, kind of like very negative comments are there too. It's kind of like, it's very exciting to push a product to market.
Okay,
and
it's about acceptance. Any other questions? Over here. So we're going to. This will be the last question, because we're going to try to keep on time.
Thanks for that. Thinking about your ideas, and it seems like each of you have looked at a situation and then kind of taken a step to the left and looked at it from a different direction, really thinking outside of the box. And I wanted to ask from you, who are all very successful doing this, what is your advice for someone who's trying to achieve the same thing? How do you look at something from the left and get another idea that ends up being that spark of innovation that we've seen here today?
Ladies first.
I actually recently had such a moment, not necessarily related to our innovation, but where it's actually whenever somebody says it won't work, it's the worst moment, but at the same time it's the best moment, because also it's within our team. So if somebody in the team says to me, no, this won't work, like it doesn't work, like it's too much, or it won't work, that's the moment where I'm really afraid as well. But that's when we start to think, oh yeah, shit, maybe it really doesn't work, but like what can we do about it? And maybe if we do this, maybe then it works. So it's really this hard moment that makes you think differently about something, and that's where something good happens usually.
So there's a lot of nodding. Anything else you'd like to add?
No, I just think that.
You think that's great?
Put your finger on.
And a lot of hard work. I think it's a lot of days and nights. I mean, there's no other way.
Okay.
You just keep
well,
working.
thank you. Can everybody give them a great big hand for some three very talented entrepreneurs? And I'm sure they'll be around if you want to ask some more questions. Thank you.
Thank you.